Lee.
Hello to everybody. I don't know where it is, morning, noon, or evening where you are. I'm very grateful that you're here. And if you'd be open to that, I'd like to see you for a second, because I'd be interested to know how your mental battery is going. So if you'd be willing to share, like, this is like my battery is fully charged and this is like, there's no more battery. If you'd be willing to share that, I'd be interested how you are. Half or fully charged, that's great. And then another thing I'd be interested in is to know who lives in a co-housing. Great. I'd be happy to exchange with you. And then I'd be interested in knowing, is there anybody trying to build the co-housing? 1, 2, 3, yeah. Okay, thanks for sharing that. So I think I'm gonna share my screen now, if I manage to do that. How is this? I think it works. Okay, so my name is Lee, and I'm a co-founder of Cohousing the Reef. And I would like to give a short presentation about how we have integrated sociocracy in our governance. We are a starting co-housing group, which means we're still not building, so we're gathering money to start doing that. And I'd like to talk about how we have tweaked sociocracy to make it work for us. And then in the second part, I want to spend some time on something that is maybe quite innovative that we do. We have an approach to information flows that is radical transparency and open knowledge. So we share everything that we can share. We don't use emails, and all messages are available to all members. But before I say anything else, for professional reasons, I need to insist that I'm here in personal capacity as a member of Cohousing the Reef, and that all views expressed are strictly my own. Said that, quick word about our cohousing. So we're based in Brussels, Belgium, Europe, and our project is to build 20 to 30 apartments with a shared garden and some common spaces. The total budget is about 9 million euro. We're self-managed. Currently, we're 11 households, so we're looking for 10, 15 more. And if things go well, in a week or 2 or 3, we may be signing a 1 million euro contract to really buy that site. For those who are familiar with Belgium, I just want to say 2 words, because you may wonder, like, in a country that is Dutch, French, and German speaking, why is this group using English as their common language? And the origin story of that is that in the group of founding members, I was the only one who spoke a local language, Dutch, which the others didn't speak. And in Brussels, the common language is French, which none of us really spoke well. And so we decided that we'd rather speak bad English together than very bad French. In the meanwhile, there's more French speakers who have joined, but it's also become not a question of perfection, but of communication. So if some people would be speaking their native language and other people would be speaking their third language, it doesn't create the openness that we desired. And so this has the lucky coincidence that all the documents that we share are in English and therefore hopefully more accessible. With that, I'm going to show you the overview of my presentation. I want to start with a short scene set to explain what the challenges are and why we're doing things the way we're doing them. Then in the second part, I want to speak a bit about how we use sociocracy and how we don't use it. So I call it Sociocracy Plus, but it could also be called Sociocracy Minus. And then I want to talk about this not using emails, radical transparency, and open knowledge, which may also be interesting for groups that don't do co-housing. So, challenges. Like I said, it's a very high stakes project. The budget is 9 million euro, and that's not just some rich person's investment money or capital that can be lost just with a bankruptcy. These are our lifetime savings, and we really can't mess up. To make matters worse, when you want to do this, the only possible legal structure is an unlimited liability company. That means if and when we're going to receive a multi-million euro bill of the construction company and we can't pay it, the creditor will come after our personal savings, the money on my bank account, my house, my car. So off-the-shelf sociocracy in this context, good enough for now, safe enough to try, is not sufficient for us to create the level of safety that we need. It's a thin line between courageous and crazy. And so when we were doing our research, like, yes, this is something we really want to do, but it sounds really risky. And how do we do it? At some point, we were visiting co-housings, and we visited Brutopia here in Brussels. And we met a co-housing coach. So he has built his own co-housing and has coached 2 more together with the experienced architects. And so what we learned then and there is that it is possible, it can be done, it has been done, and you can do it in a safe manner. And the trick that he showed us is that you can set your bylaws of the companies so that you mitigate the risk from unlimited liability. In one sentence, what you do is before anything happens, you ask everybody to put the money in a blocked account so that the problem of not being able to pay the bills gets much reduced. That said, so it can be done in a safe manner. It's nevertheless really challenging. Why? Because we're not professional project developers, so we miss everything that they have. So we don't have investment capital. We can hack it and we can put our capital together, but it gets more complicated. We're not professionals, so we don't have the skills and the experience. We do this after our working hours, so we have very limited time. And continuity is also a problem. So it's a live decision, and not many people want to do it. And so we have a lot of people coming in and then deciding they don't want to do it. And so this problem of continuity is also something that creates challenges. So then when we were visiting these co-housing, researching, like, can we do this? Do we want to do this? How can we do this? What we saw is that most, if not all, co-housings that we visited had a lot of problems. There's a problem of being slow to make decisions, not being clear on which decisions were made, not following up on decisions, having lack of predictability, like how are we deciding this? Oh, this has been decided, I don't agree, did it wrong, there's no accountability. This is the harder side, but also on the softer side, there's what we saw, there's often problems of trust, harmony, inclusion, authenticity, connection. So before we started, these were the needs that we saw that we somehow needed to fulfill with the governance system that we were going to put in place. I'm going to take a breath and drink a little before I recap. So, using sociocracy in a starting co-housing group. So we are Co-housing the Reef, we're based in Brussels. We have a €9 million budget, and there's a lot of challenges. There's unlimited liability, and then all the challenges that arise from not being a professional project developer. So when we were just in the early stages, what I did, I'm a co-founder, and I'm also the architect of our governance system. What I did is I did a lot of reading. And here in this slide, I have put 4 books that have inspired me like I can't even describe. The first one, Reinventing Organizations, is the least applicable. It's about organizations that do things differently. So they pay a lot of attention to well-being, purpose. And so just for the little story, in that book, there's an example of a group that uses Tingsha bells. These are like the little Tibetan bells that you can use. And in this group, these bells were put on the table. And if somebody felt like the group was losing track or there was too much friction, the debate was getting heated, then any person can use the bells, ting them, and then everybody stays silent. And it's only the facilitator who can then reopen the meeting. And so that's what we did. We bought these bells, we put them on the table for 2 years, and we're always joking, like, these bells, we never used them until last week, where things did get heated. We were very tired because of the purchase of the site, and then we were like, are we consenting, objecting to proposal, which proposal? It was complete chaos, and somebody stood up, ding, and we went silent. So that's one of the things that we ode to that book. Moving further to the right, the Empowerment Manual is a book by Starhawk, where she takes the example of a co-housing group and she tells a fictional story about everything that can go wrong in a co-housing and what does go wrong in most co-housings. So she speaks about power, responsibility, accountability, and it's inspired me a lot. She really encourages you to think about who has access to power, how can you create clarity about that? But what she doesn't explain is how do you do that? And about that moment, I found the book Many Voices, One Song by Ted Rao and Jerry Gonzalez, and they're super complementary. So where the Empowerment Manual explains the why, Many Voices, for me, explain the how. And I found a very clear handbook in our group. We're 11 households and we have 4 books, so we use it really a lot. We use it modularly, so we use things that we can and then we tweak them. But it's really made all the difference and I can really recommend it. And then Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg has also been a real turnaround for me. And in the context of our governance, what it brought me is going back to needs, not strategies. So whenever we're confronted with a problem, first think about the needs before going into the strategies. Then just to avoid that anybody would think that we're very smart, I also want to pay tribute to a couple of co-housings that have shared their experiences and which have really also inspired our governance document. There's Cohousing for Life from Earthsong Cohousing in New Zealand. There's Comment Construire un Cohabitat from our sister co-housing here in Brussels. And then there's Heartwood Co-housing in Arizona, I think, who also share a lot of documents. And then a big thank you to all the local groups who have showed us around and shared their experiences. Now there's no escape. So here, this is my slide to say the glass is half full. So without a question of a doubt, sociocracy is really the backbone of our governance system. And without that, we would have been completely lost. We wouldn't even made it to where we are now. That said, like I said, we're a high stakes project. We needed to tweak a couple of things. So things we do differently from sociocracy is we don't use most of the terminology. Just because I thought it's complicated enough already that I didn't want to introduce terms that we might not use anyway. Typical for co-housings is that important decisions are not taken in the circles like it is done in sociocracy. We prepare the decisions in circles or teams, and they are presented in a plenary meeting which has all the members, and we decide them there. For that reason, our coordination group or general circle meetings are low in intensity and very flexible. That's because who decide is less relevant because we decide in a plenary meeting, and also because we just don't have the time to have an extra meeting. To compensate for that, we have an extra role, which is also not very sociocratic. We have a group coordinator. For the moment, that's me, which is a bit like general circle leader with extra responsibility. So I also make the agenda for the plenary meetings, and I do a bit of the coordination that would happen normally in a general circle. Likewise, we don't do double linking because we don't have enough time and we don't have enough people. Moving on, I think the key building block of our governance system is that we offer clarity. So there's 4 things that we offer to everybody who's new. So there's the vision and mission, which is something that is recommended by Starhawk and in Many Voices, One Song. Be clear about what you're doing. And that's what we do in the blueprint. So it goes from values, sustainability, diversity to really concrete things like no pets in the garden. Privacy is very important. Sociocracy is non-negotiable. Then we have a governance document that explains the membership process, how we make decisions, and even how we plan to solve conflict. So should things really get out of control, there's an agreement that we will pay for a professional mediator to avoid that things really get ugly. We have working methods, values, and agreements, and you can all find them online. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. It's actually already online, but I'll share it at the end of my presentation. So that's a very rigid, clearly defined framework. And within that, we explicitly make space for flexibility. So we are clear about the fact that we want and that we need flexibility, because you can't foresee everything in a governance document for such a complex project. And so in our governance document, the first page, it says, this document should be used flexibly and never dogmatically. And when there's a problem, we fall back on core principles, common sense, and mutual trust. Values, not rules, is an example of that. So for example, our membership process has a three-month deadline. If somebody would need more time, they can just say, okay, I've got this and that going on. Can I get 6 more weeks? Of course, the need is to get clarity and commitment. It's not the strategy or the rule that we want to enforce. From there, I'm going to jump to our, like, really something that is absolutely different from sociocratic decision-making, which is the fact that we have distinguished five levels of decision-making. So they range from 1 to 5. The 1 is trivial. It's operational day-to-day decisions. And there it's do or decide. I'm reading from the left to the right. The second are like sociocracy. So it's team autonomy, choice of the software, change to the buddy system. Here it's do or decide, but we ask transparency. So we ask the team or the circle to write 1 or 2 paragraphs on the forum so that everybody is informed. Impactful but reversible decisions go to the plenary meeting. So the membership process, the process for expenses, where we fall back on consent as it is defined. So good enough for now, safe enough to try, everybody on board, consent, go, review, then and then. But in a co-housing, that's not always the case. So we have decisions that are impactful and costly to reverse. So good enough for now just doesn't do it. So in these cases, we also consent in the plenary, but with more care and under the clear agreement that review is only possible under very specific conditions. And then we have sensitive decisions, which is something that's been recommended by most co-housing that we met, is that decisions about membership and long-term financial issues, that we decide them by consensus. And then finally, there's the X category, where it's just not suitable for consent, either because it's very urgent, either because there's a component of preference. And in these cases, we fall back on qualified majority voting. I have another slide that I think I'm going to skip because it says exactly the same. So majority vote, consent, or consensus. And then I want to say a last word, something that also refers to what Starhawk says. Like, in collaborative groups, you have to be very clear about power, who has it, and how you can get it. And when we were discussing about commitment, it's a typical problem in co-housings, like you're not doing enough work, we decided to integrate a paragraph on what it means to get power. And so in our group, it is very clear that if you want more influence or power, you are very welcome to join the team or circle and do things the way you want to see them. For people who are less involved, who are unable to put in work, because there is the option in our group to go on team timeout and just take a step back because you've got something going on, because you've got care duties. And in those cases, in our onboarding manual, we remind people that there's a need for reciprocity and support, so that criticism is always welcome, but it's easier to receive from people who are pulling their weight. Likewise, we ask that people who are not actively involved don't influence or slow down decisions unless it's in their I can't live with this zone. And then, just for the sake of completeness, I have a slide on membership. Do I? Yes. Which is again something that is highlighted, I think, both in the empowerment manual and in Many Voices, One Song. You've got to be clear about who's a member of your circles, because sadly is what we have learned, that it gets harder if you want to do this with just anybody. And so we look for people who can collaborate, take responsibility. And so we have a process, 2 stages, where we ask for a financial commitment, deadlines to decide on membership, because this we have had to learn the hard way. We've had people stay with us 6 to 9 months to then come to realization that they didn't want to live in this city. So to avoid that, we now have deadlines in this financial commitment. We decide on it by consensus. We have an onboarding package that can help people to get on board. We have a buddy system and a lot of training courses. So we teach governance, sociocratic facilitation, and nonviolent communication. Here, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to take a breath and drink a little before I recap. So we're doing sociocracy in a starting co-housing group. We're co-housing the Reef. We're based in Brussels. We're about to spend 9 million euros and build the co-housing of our dreams. And I explained that this is very challenging because we're not a project developer, because there's a limited liability, and because of all the problems that most co-housing encounter. And so then in the second part, I explained the need for a governance system, that we have a very strict framework with a vision, the governance document, and values and agreements, complemented with a lot of flexibility. Then I explained that we have different levels of decisions, that we then see whether a decision goes to the plenary meeting, yes or no. And then I explained a bit about participation means power, to explain that we're very clear about who can get more power and how. With that said, now I'd like to go into open knowledge and radical transparency, which is less specific to co-housings, but at the end, I'm going to conclude that without this approach, I don't think our governance model would work as well as it does now. And so to start, I have a slide to speak about openness. So openness is a key pillar in our vision and mission. The Reef is called the Reef for that reason, by the way. So we picture it as an ecosystem that is open for people to come in and come out and to produce value. And so in practice, what we do is we try to work on the principle of information as a common resource. First of all, that means radical transparency. So information flows must be clear and accessible to all. So there's no emails, and everybody has access to all documents and all messages. There's no walls, there's no secret corners. Everything is open. Then, for the sake of information as a common resource, we have a documentation or it didn't happen principle. That means that the entire history of the Reef is documented. So all decisions are documented, all meetings are documented, which means also that if somebody new comes in, it's relatively easy to trace back why things are the way they are. And then finally, open knowledge means that as many documents as possible are made publicly available and are free to be used, modified, and or shared. Here, I got a slide from our open knowledge activist who insisted that we use open knowledge in the open definition way. So it means everything is free to be used, modified, and shared by anyone for any purpose, according to the FAIR principle. So it needs to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And then there's things I don't even understand, but it says there, it's on the web and unprotected and under an open license. Making it more tangible, we share everything that we can share. You'll get a copy of the presentation. These are all links, governance document, decision log, onboarding package. You take it, use it, tweak it. So if you want to start a co-housing, here are our documents. Anything that you don't like, you change it and you're good to go. For the sake of documentation, I have copied 2 slides from our onboarding manual. And here I may want to point to the second bullet point where it says, we make an effort to minimize tacit insider knowledge in favor of explicit shared knowledge. And that's a power argument, because if knowledge only sits in somebody's head, that person has power. And it creates a risk of disruption. It has all sorts of risk. And so in the Reef, if you know something, you have to write it down and you have to put it in the open. So for example, our accountant has written a manual. So if for some reason he goes on a business trip, we can take the manual and still take care of things. Documentation or didn't happen, already explained. And here I have an example. Open knowledge plus documentation or didn't happen. So here you see on our open space, we have a report. We visited another co-housing and there's Alberto who wrote a report that now everybody on the web can read, and all new Reeflings who come in, they can click on co-housing knowledge and see what we learned there. I also have an example of open knowledge and radical transparency. So here you see a post by Alberto where he explains that our company has unlimited liability. And so the radical transparency part here is this is publicly accessible on the web. This is our own internal conversation. And you'll see somebody realizing unlimited liability. That means they can get to my bank account, where Alberto says, yes, that's how it works. And so you see the entire conversation unfolding. And that's what we do. There's open knowledge and there's no secrets for us. Everybody can read in and see what we're saying. And then here's another example, open knowledge, radical transparency. Why is Reef using OpenTalk as the video conferencing tool? You can put in a search, OpenTalk, and then this post will pop up where again, Alberto is explaining. So we considered these two, we did a test, and so we're suggesting OpenTalk. So that's what we do. And so you could say that looks a little burdensome because there's a lot of writing, and that's definitely true. So why do we do it? Because we believe there's societal value, because we're producing things that may be useful for other groups or other people. But for us, there's also really organizational value. So what we find is that this radical transparency, the fact that there's no walls, no secret corners, it builds trust. Because in eco-housing, there's this tension, as in like, I'm putting in my money, I need to be sure it's going to be well spent and that I get my say. So being able to see everything really builds trust. And I think also efficient collaboration and continuity. How do we do it? And that's how I want to spend the rest of my presentation. I don't want to nerd out, but I do want to talk a little about that our IT infrastructure is really key, because without that, it wouldn't be possible, but that without culture and working methods and intensive onboarding, it's also not possible. And so just for the IT nerds, I have a slide that sets out our infrastructure. The key component here is the first line for the forum, which is our email substitute. We use Discourse, and then we complement it with Signal, Nextcloud, OpenTalk, and Free Agent. Discourse, I have a slide mostly for the sake of documentation. I find it easy, simple, and structured. So all members have access to all messages, and all messages are publicly accessible. There's no internal emails, and it's very structured. So contrary to Microsoft Teams, every post has its own URL. So you can always put a link to a specific message. You can work with it by email, and we complement it with a Signal chat. And what we find is that having this forum allows us to speed things up, because we only see each other every 2 or 3 weeks, and in between we can do these online exchanges to make further progress. Then I have a lot of screenshots to demonstrate a bit how this works, or what works well for me. So in Discourse on the left, this is the navigator, so you can see which messages that you got, and you can, because of the symbols, you can easily prioritize them. On the right, I pulled out the Reef building tag. So also contrary to Microsoft Teams, you don't need to choose a channel. So you can put a tag, so you don't get the platypus problem. Is it a bird? Is it a mammal? It can be a bird and a mammal. So in our case, you see it lower down. Something can be both relevant for the finance circle and for the building circle. And through this tag, you can pull out the messages that are only for Reef building. Another difference with Microsoft Teams is that you can move posts to another thread. So if somebody is off topic, you just take the post and you zap it to the right post, which keeps the conversation clean, structured, and easy to read. Also, contrary to Microsoft Teams, you can tweak notifications for each and every single thread. So you can say, this one, never talk to me about it again. Or you can say, give me a notification every time somebody replies, because I really want to know. So for every single thread, you can do that. And if there's something you need to follow up on, as this is on the right, you can create a bookmark. You can say, can you please remind me next Monday? And then next Monday in your notifications, you'll get a reminder, say, hey, you wanted to have a look at that post. So that was Discourse. Moving on, we use Nextcloud for cloud storage. The advantage that this has is that we can create publicly accessible links, which we need for the open knowledge. And for the transparency and the information flows, there's this activity log. So it gives a log of everything that's going on. And so you can always see if a circle has come together, they have minutes. you'll see it there. We also have a shared calendar, so everybody can see all meetings that are going on, which also helps for coordination. And then finally, accounting is again something where we take radical transparency to the maximum. So our accountant uses free agent, and the innovative thing here is that he created accounts for each and every reefling. So everybody can access this at any time and see our expenses, the state of our bank account, the budget. You can just go in and pull it out. And then the accountant also publishes the state of our finances. That's also accessible online. That said, I do want to note that IT will never be a silver bullet, because working methods are also half of the work. So we spend a lot of time onboarding, and we insist that all communication needs to be on discourse, and that if emails are sent to third parties, that a copy needs to be in our Proton Mail inbox. And what's also important to us is that we're asynchronous. So that means we work at different times and we reduce notifications to the maximum. So on discourse, we only ask that people check in twice a week. So you don't have that notification speed of email, which also slows down conversation. And we complement that with Signal, where again, the agreement is that you can mute all groups except for the emergency chat. And then finally, it has to be said that there's downside, of course, to this approach. The first one being that it's found to be counterintuitive. There's also new IT tools that people need to be familiar with. And we notice that there's people who come in, and even if we take the time and explain it, can't do it. And that's a pity. So that's a choice that comes with a cost. And there's not much that we can change about that. So, and there's also the tendency to default to private messaging. And so there's this onboarding effort and a need for discipline where senior members, they need to say, can you please put that on the forum? But yeah, I guess that's how things go. Then I come back and I'm drawing my presentation to a close. So you've seen this slide already. So why do we do it? Because there's societal value and organizational value. And here I want to say everything that I explained about the challenges that we face and the fact that we have Sociocracy Plus or Sociocracy Minus, depending on how you want to look at it. Without this approach of radical transparency, I believe that our governance model would be much less efficient and stable. And that's about the end of my presentation. And here again, I want to give credit where credit is due. The open knowledge approach is 100% inspired by EdgeRiders. EdgeRiders is a consultancy that is 100% remote and that has pioneered this approach. So a co-founder of EdgeRiders is also a co-founder of our Cohousing. And they are so kind to host our forum on their server. For people who wonder, like, what is EdgeRiders? I have a slide here. And I recommend you click on it. So they have this documentation. They have a lot of manuals on how to collaborate remotely. And then very cool projects. So they have Internet of Humans, Sci-Fi Economics. If you're interested, I really recommend you have a look. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation, recapping in 3 sentences. So it's a challenging project, high budget, unlimited liability. We're not a professional project developer. Governance, we do Sociocracy Plus, Sociocracy Minus with different levels of decision-making, where most decisions go to a plenary meeting. And then I spoke about our approach to open knowledge and radical transparency, which in a nutshell is all information is available to everybody, and we publish as much online as we can. Normally, I would share my email address, but as we don't use email, I shared a link to our forum. So if you want to stay in touch or you want to stay up to date, you can click here and either join on our forum and ask your question there, or you can register for our newsletter. And I'm gonna now try to unshare, see where I can manage. Stop sharing, open the chat. Can't find the chat. Can't find the chat. Okay, then until I find the chat, I think I'm gonna open for questions. Mathilde.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was really clear, and I really appreciated your recapping. It feels like a little bit redundant, but I need that to be able to be like reminding what you just said. So it was very helpful. I was wondering about so I work with co-housing groups as a professional, and whenever we talk about any type of IT tools, the first question is always about like, what about older people and senior people, and how do we make sure, how is this fair to everybody when some people grew up with technology and the internet and others didn't? And so do you have senior people in your group? Is there like a special onboarding for people that aren't used to use IT technology as much? That's my question.
Yeah, I see that, and I can relate to it a lot. What we see indeed is that there seems to be an age cutoff where things get more difficult. And for now, indeed, we offer tutorials, one-on-ones, and everything that we can offer, but we see that it doesn't help. And I think one constraint on our side is also that for the moment, we're not very numerous. And I hope that we're now really going to expand that. When we expand, it's just going to be more people who can carry it. And hopefully then even do like very tweaked approaches for if there's a really senior person, that we can find a way, maybe we print something, we phone, because inclusion is one of our key values, and we want to make that happen.
Thank you.
Flora?
Yes, thank you. You had said that you're not using double linking now, maybe because there's not enough people. I was wondering if you plan to use double linking in the future. Check.
I don't expect it. And if Jerry is online, he's my teacher, and I'm training to be a trainer. So I'll have to admit, it's a bit messy, our circle structure, and we've got so much on our plate that having two people here and there, I don't see it happening. But then I do want to say that because of the radical transparency there, we don't have that in-out need of the, like, everything is out there. So in a way it compensates. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yes, Flora? You're muted, Flora.
You indicated that you weren't using the terminology, and I guess in my mind, I have like terminology like inextricably linked with creating a sociocracy culture, and I'm open to it not being so. So if you could just share any information on that, that would be enlightening. Thank you.
Maybe I overstated a bit there. So for some reason we started calling circles teams, and there was somebody who suggested that instead of circle leader, we called it coordinator, because there's less suggestion of power. We do use consent, objection, but then everything that's handoff, handover, delegate, we don't use it because we don't have the bandwidth. Pat?
I'm thinking that just because everything's open and out there and available, how do you combat people's sense of just being overwhelmed by how much? And just because they can read it, how many people do read it? And do you find that people just get kind of tired of and just go take the lazy way, expect someone else to tell them that something's whatever?
Yeah, I see that. And I think it's maybe the biggest downside of what we do is that there's a lot of things to read. And at the same time, in a way, I do see things falling into place. So there's people with a strong hunger for information, they read everything. And then for those who are very trustful, say, give me the summary, they get the summary at the plenary meeting. which has links to like the relevant post. And in a way that seems to work. I see Sophie from my group is online. I don't know if you want to chip in, you want to share something. I don't want to put you on the spot either.
No, I mean, I agree. But I mean, also we get tags depending on what team you're on, or you can be tagged individually. So yeah, depending on the notifications, you can tweet that and then just read the posts that are relevant to you. And then if you want a response from somebody to tag that person, that works really well.
Thanks, Sophie. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah. Jonas, hi.
Hi. Do you also have a mission circle, or how do you handle that? Didn't remember.
We have a mission-ish circle since not so long ago. So we have a plenary meeting and we have full members meetings, which are meetings where only full members are welcome. And they have different purposes. So the plenary meetings are for day-to-day management and decision-making. And for the full members meetings, I refer to Many Voices, One Song. And it says there that you need a place where you prioritize the important over the urgent. And that's the mission of that circle. So I would call it a mission circle equivalent. Yes, Laura?
So I have a question about pricing. In my intentional communities, properties are sold individually, and it's like a market price. It can be any price, and it's an intentional community, so we have like homes and different than co-housing, I guess. So I'm just wondering how that works. Like, are all the prices the same? And if they are different, is that based on a certain criteria? And if there is a criteria, does that help lower income people come in or things like that? Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, indeed. So there's two things that we do to make things a little easier for people with smaller budget. The first is that we'll deliver the unit's casco. So it's going to be walls, windows, and a door and nothing else. So then if you want to paint the walls with gold, you can do that. And if you want to do it really sober, you can also do that. And then for pricing, based on the advice of our coach, we will price our units according to resale value. So if you would picture a very simple co-housing, 10 units of €100,000. If you would do equal pricing, they would be all the same, but then the unit at the higher floor, if they would sell their unit, they will sell it for €110,000, while the one at the ground floor, they'll sell it for 90,000. And so we have this price fork, minus 10% plus 10%, where the higher values will be more expensive and the lower values will be less expensive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I see you nod.
Thank you.
Jonas?
How does your consensus procedure go then? If you go membership is consensus, then people don't have to give reasons, or it just how do you do that? Or is this some kind of structure in the consensus?
We're a very conflict avoidant group, and so we try to not get to that point. So we have full members meetings where we talk about the membership process. So we really talk about, okay, this person, how's it going? And then we do a round. And usually what happens is that several people would say, I have this or that situation and I felt unsettled because I need this. And so usually that happens several times. And then if that happens, we agree that somebody will buddy them. We'll ask for a one-on-one and say, okay, we see this and this happening. That doesn't work very well for us. Can we talk about it and see how we can make that better? And so things have a history, and usually by the time the deadline's there's a mutual understanding whether this is a hell yes or whether it's not a hell yes. So in practice, we've never reached that point. But if somebody would ever say, I don't give consensus because this doesn't work for me, that will be accepted. Yeah. Matilda? I lost you.
Yeah, I was wondering about, so it seems like you have what we call explorers, where, you know, you're starting to commit to the group, but you're not the full member. And then you have members. Like, at which point can people participate in the decision-making process?
We've learned that the hard way. So you become an associate member, you pay 125, you participate like your normal member, you don't decide. You only start deciding when you put in 2,000 euro, and then you are a full member. And these 2,000 for now can still be recovered. So if you say you change your mind, and whenever a new member comes in, they'll pay you back your 2,000 euro. We can't just give them back right away because we're spending the money. I'm looking at Flora and the time. Should we?
Yes, we have about 3 minutes left.
3 minutes.
And so people are welcome to ask their burning questions, or whatever Lee would like to do is what I'm interested in.
I just want to respect the time. I want to thank the organizers for creating this opportunity, and for everybody also here for taking the time and being here, and extend an open invitation as in really. So I put the link in the chat. So we now have a separate board where you're welcome to share a question or your experience. I've managed expectations right away because we're about to spend €1 million. We need all our time and emotions just here and now. But when we find a moment, we'd be really happy to exchange. And I'm going to hold it here. I can stay, but I'm not sure whether it's allowed. Flora, over to you.
Sure. So yes, so first I just want to thank our speaker, Lee, for this wonderful presentation, and thank everybody for attending Sociocracy in a multi-million co-housing project. And yes, just thank everybody. And I just want to invite you to express your appreciation or your learnings in the chat. And Sociocracy for All invites you to visit the donation page, which I have put into the chat for you, which I can do again. And regarding staying after the meeting, I'm going to go host another meeting, but I can leave this meeting open, and we can, you know, leave the recording would be on and off according to your wishes. So, does that sound okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you to everybody.
Bye. Is there anybody who would like to stay, or shall we call it a day?
Thank you so much. I'm leaving, but thank you. That was super helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, have a good day, or whatever's left. Bye-bye.
I don't know how you do those hearts on your screen.
I don't know. You're the wrong person to ask.
But they're very nice. Bye.
Okay, bye.